My fiancée invited her ex-boyfriend to our wedding and called him the love of her life in front of everyone as a prank. So, I pranked her back by pulling out of the entire wedding. So, a bit about me: I'm 28, working in marketing at a tech company in Seattle. Details changed for privacy, and until recently, I was engaged to my girlfriend of 4 years, Vanessa, 27F. We met at a friend's housewarming party back in 2019, hit it off immediately, and moved in together after about a year. Our apartment wasn't anything special, one of those cookie-cutter two-bedroom places with paper-thin walls and a view of another identical apartment building, but we made it home. We even had this giant Maine Coon cat named Bowie, after David Bowie, because he had these weird different colored eyes, who was basically our first kid, huge orange fluffball that would sleep on my chest every night and attack my feet every morning at exactly 5:45 a.m. like clockwork. Vanessa always said Bowie was more my cat than hers. She wasn't wrong. He'd follow me around the house like a dog and would sit in the bathroom sink while I got ready for work. I thought Vanessa was my soulmate. We had the same taste in obscure indie bands, binged the same trashy reality TV shows. 90 Day Fiancé was our Sunday night ritual, complete with takeout and a drinking game we made up, and could talk for hours about literally nothing. My morning commute routine literally revolved around texting her memes while stuck on the I-5. My coworkers used to tease me about how I'd light up whenever she called. But there was always this thing about Vanessa. She had this obsession with pranks and getting attention. And not just any pranks, the kind that made people uncomfortable but where you're not allowed to be upset because it's just a joke. Like, constantly. When I got promoted to senior marketing manager last year, after busting my ass for 3 years, she threw this surprise party at our favorite brewery. Super thoughtful, right? Except when it came time for the toast, instead of saying something nice, she gave this whole speech about how I must have blackmail on the CEO and how I failed upward and got lucky. My boss was there. My team was there. Everyone laughed awkwardly while I just stood there holding my beer, trying to smile through it. Later, when I told her it hurt my feelings, she rolled her eyes and said I was being too sensitive and needed to learn to take a joke. But that wasn't even close to the worst of it. When I proposed to her, after saving for 6 months for the ring she had been not so subtly hinting at, she pretended to say no. Not just a quick haha, just kidding, yes. But a full 5 minutes of fake crying and saying she wasn't ready and needed to think about it while I was down on one knee in the middle of her favorite restaurant. People around us were staring. An older couple nearby looked like they were about to come over and comfort me. Just when I was about to have a full panic attack, she burst out laughing and said, "Of course I'll marry you, dummy. You should see your face right now." I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. Because I loved her, and I kept telling myself that's just who she was, someone who loved jokes and drama and being the center of attention. My friends didn't like her much, especially my best friend Ryan, who kept saying she was emotionally manipulative and that I deserved better. I brushed him off because, love makes you stupid sometimes. We planned the wedding for June 2023, nothing too fancy, about 120 guests at this renovated barn venue outside the city. My parents helped with a lot of the costs. They loved Vanessa despite her quirks, and I covered most of the rest. Vanessa's parents chipped in for the flowers and some of the catering, but they weren't exactly rolling in cash. I didn't mind, I was doing well at my job, and I wanted to give her the wedding she'd been pinning on her dream wedding board for years. About a month before the wedding, I started getting weird vibes. Vanessa's bridesmaids would go silent whenever I walked into the room, then burst into giggles when I left. One night, after a few too many glasses of wine, her maid of honor, Kayla, made this comment about how I better be prepared for the big day with this weird smirk on her face. When I asked what she meant, she just laughed and said, "Oh, you'll see." That set off all kinds of alarm bells in my head. I tried asking Vanessa if she was planning something for the wedding, and she just gave me this innocent look and said, "Why would you think that?" But I could tell from the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes that something was up. So I called my friend Mark, who happens to be a lawyer. He's that friend everyone has who gives free legal advice at parties after a few beers, and told him I needed a little insurance. Together, we drafted this completely fake prenup loaded with legal jargon and one very specific clause: if either party engages in public embarrassment of the other before the signing of this contract, all jointly planned financial obligations are immediately nullified, and a public apology must be issued. It was completely unenforceable bullcrap, but it looked official AF with all these stamps and seals and crap. I had it printed, signed my part, and kept it ready. Just in case. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything seemed perfect. The venue looked amazing, fairy lights everywhere, flowers that cost more than my first car, the whole 9 yards. Vanessa looked stunning in her dress, which made me even more nervous about what she might be planning. I kept the fake prenup folded in my suit jacket, hoping I wouldn't need to use it. The ceremony started normally enough. My mom was already tearing up in the front row. She cries at commercials, so no surprise there, and my dad looked uncomfortable but proud in his rented tux. My college roommates were all there, including Ryan as my best man, who kept giving me these "you sure about this?" looks. Everything was going smoothly until the moment we stood at the altar and were supposed to exchange vows. That's when Vanessa's face changed. I knew that look. It was the same look she got right before every prank she ever pulled. She grinned, took the microphone from the officiant, who looked confused as hell, and said, "I have a little surprise for my wonderful soon-to-be husband." She turned to the crowd and dramatically waved toward the doors. "Ladies and gentlemen, Let's give a warm welcome to the real love of my life. I froze. The guests turned in confusion as a man walked in. It was Jason, Vanessa's ex-boyfriend from college. The one she dated for 3 years before me. The one she once told me was the one who got away when she was drunk at a party, then claimed the next day she didn't remember saying it. The one she swore she hadn't spoken to in years. Vanessa beamed like this was the greatest thing ever. Come on up, Jason. Jason, tall, annoyingly good-looking in that generic gym bro way, wearing a suit that was probably more expensive than mine, strode up to the altar, grinning. The crowd was dead silent except for a few uncomfortable coughs and whispers. You didn't think I'd get married without my first love here, did you? Vanessa said, practically bouncing with excitement. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might actually burst out of my chest. I looked at the guests, my mom's face had gone completely white, my dad looked like he was about to come unglued, and most of the guests just looked deeply uncomfortable. Then Vanessa turned to me with the biggest smile and said, Babe, I just couldn't say I do without making sure Jason approved first. I mean, he was such a big part of my life, and well, we've been talking a lot lately. Talking a lot? I managed to choke out. Jason clapped me on the back and smirked. Relax, man. It's just a joke. The bridesmaids, Kayla, Jen, and Ashley, were all giggling like this was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. But Vanessa wasn't done. Oh, and just for fun, I had a little poll running among my bridesmaids this whole time, she announced, still holding the microphone. We were taking bets on whether I'd actually go through with the wedding or not. She whipped out her phone and showed a group chat on the screen, filled with laughing emojis, votes on whether she'd fake cold feet, and even bets on whether I'd cry at the altar. One message from Kayla read, $50 says he cries like a baby when you bring out Jason. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My mother looked like she was about to faint. My father's face turned beet red. My best man, Ryan, just muttered, what the actual crap? I felt my hands shaking as I stood there, trying to process what was happening. Vanessa was standing there, still grinning, clearly expecting me to just laugh it off like I always did. Oh, come on, babe, lighten up, she said, nudging me with her elbow. You didn't really think I was going to leave you, right? That's when I smiled, because I had the perfect response ready. The room was dead silent. Vanessa stood at the altar, grinning like she had just pulled off the greatest prank in history. Her bridesmaids were still giggling like middle schoolers. Jason was standing beside me like he belonged there, and half the guests were looking at me with pity in their eyes. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, like when you're about to give a presentation and suddenly realize you're completely unprepared. My mother was clutching my father's arm, looking like she was about to cry. My best man, Ryan, looked ready to swing at Jason. My college roommate, Dave, who had flown in from Boston just for this, was shaking his head in disbelief. And Vanessa? She was still waiting for me to laugh along with her like I always did. Oh, come on, babe, she said, nudging me again. Say something. I finally took a deep breath and smiled. It was the kind of smile you give when you're about to fire someone, not the kind you give your bride. Wow, I said, shaking my head. This is amazing. Vanessa beamed. She thought I was going along with it. She had no idea that I had been ready for this moment ever since Kayla's drunken hint. I turned to the officiant, this older guy who looked just as horrified as everyone else. Hey, do we have a table for signing the marriage license? I need to grab something. The officiant, clearly relieved to have something to do other than stand there awkwardly, nodded and gestured toward a small table off to the side with a white cloth and a fancy pen. I calmly walked over to where my jacket was hanging on a chair, pulled the black folder from the inside pocket, and held it up for everyone to see. My hands weren't even shaking anymore. I was running on pure adrenaline and 4 years of pent-up frustration. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, making sure my voice carried through the barn, before we go any further, I'd like to share a document with my dear fiancée. Vanessa tilted her head, confusion finally starting to replace her smug smile. Wait, what? I slowly unclipped the folder and pulled out the fake prenup that Mark had helped me craft. It looked impressive as hell with all its official-looking stamps and legal jargon. Vanessa, I said, keeping my voice steady, I had my lawyer draft up a little agreement before the wedding. Just a small precaution, you know. Just in case you ever decided to do something like this. I held up the contract so the guests could see the official-looking stamp on the bottom. Vanessa's face immediately lost its color, like someone had drained all the blood from it. What the hell is that? She asked, her smile finally completely gone. Oh, just a little clause, I said, pretending to flip through the pages like I was looking for something specific. See this part right here? It states that if either party engages in public humiliation before the signing of the marriage license, then all joint financial obligations, like the wedding, honeymoon, and shared assets, are immediately null and void. The guests gasped. Some were even pulling out their phones now, and I was pretty sure at least a few were recording. Vanessa blinked rapidly, like she couldn't process what was happening. Wait, what? That's not real. Oh, it's very real, I said smoothly. It also requires the guilty party to issue a public apology right here, in front of all of our guests. Jason snorted from beside me. Dude, you can't be serious. This is a joke, right? I turned to him and smirked. Oh, I take pranks very seriously. Vanessa taught me that. Vanessa was starting to sweat now, her perfect makeup beginning to run a little at the temples. Babe, this is crazy. You're not actually mad, are you? It was just a little joke. I tilted my head and gave her the same condescending look she always gave me when I got upset at her pranks. Why would I be mad, Vanessa? This is hilarious. It's all part of the fun, right? I paused for effect. So here's my prank, I'm canceling this entire wedding. Dead. Silence. Her smile shattered like glass. Wait, what? Oh, don't look so shocked, I said, snapping the folder shut. You had your joke. Now it's my turn. Wedding's off. The room exploded with whispers and gasps. The officiant awkwardly stepped back from the altar, clearly wanting no part of this drama. Vanessa's face went from pale to bright red in seconds. You're joking, she said, her voice cracking. Am I? I said, turning to my best man. Ryan, would you do the honors? Ryan grinned, he'd been waiting 4 years for this moment, and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen, and loud music blared through the venue's speaker system. Except instead of the traditional wedding march, it was Hit the Road Jack. Some guests laughed, some just stared in shock, and a few actually started clapping. Vanessa? I said, watching as she looked around frantically, probably searching for someone to back her up. She looked like she was about to hyperventilate. You're not serious, she hissed. You're not walking away. I grinned. I literally am. I turned to my parents. I think we're done here. My mom nodded, tears in her eyes but a small, proud smile on her face, and my dad immediately stood up and started telling nearby guests that the wedding was over. Then I turned to Jason, who was still smirking like this was all a joke that would blow over any minute. Hey, Jason, I said. You like stealing people's fiancés, right? Well, congrats. She's all yours. That wiped the smirk off his face faster than I thought possible. Vanessa whirled around to him. Jason, tell him this is stupid. Jason backed up a step, then another. I think I'm gonna head out, actually. What? Vanessa's voice had risen to a near shriek. He was already walking down the aisle, practically speed-walking toward the exit. Now everyone was whispering. The bridesmaids were awkwardly looking at their champagne glasses like they contained the secrets of the universe. Some guests were laughing outright, and Vanessa looked like her entire world had just collapsed. You can't just leave me like this. She screamed, her voice echoing through the barn. I turned back one last time, making sure everyone could hear me. Vanessa, you love attention so much? Well, congrats. You're getting it. And with that, I walked out of my own wedding, leaving her standing there alone, humiliated, and exactly where she deserved to be. Walking out of that wedding was the best decision of my life, not gonna lie. As I stepped outside into the sunshine, because of course it was a perfect sunny day, because why wouldn't the universe make this as dramatic as possible? My best man Ryan followed, along with my parents and a handful of my college friends who wanted nothing to do with Vanessa after what she had done. Behind me, she was still at the altar, alternating between screaming my name and trying to explain to the confused guests that it was just a joke and I was overreacting. But I didn't even turn around. I just kept walking to my car, got in, and drove to the hotel where we were supposed to spend our wedding night. I packed up my stuff, checked out, and booked a room at a different hotel across town where she wouldn't think to look for me. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. My phone blew up like a Samsung Galaxy Note 7, sorry, bad joke, with texts and missed calls from Vanessa. I turned off notifications but couldn't resist reading some of them. At first, she acted confused, as if she couldn't understand why I'd left. Babe, where are you? Everyone's waiting. Like she expected me to just come back and continue the ceremony after what she'd pulled. Then came the anger. Furious messages about how I had humiliated her and how she couldn't believe I would ruin our special day over something so minor. She insisted it was just a joke, and that I had overreacted. I can't believe you would do this to me. Everyone thinks I'm the bad guy now. When I ignored her, which was honestly the hardest part, I almost texted back like 50 times, she switched tactics. Now she was threatening me, saying she would tell everyone I had abandoned her at the altar, that I had gotten cold feet, that I was the villain in this story. That was rich, considering she was the one who had turned our wedding into a circus. But she hadn't counted on one thing: receipts. My best man Ryan had screenshotted her bridesmaids group chat before we left. The same chat where they had been placing bets on whether she'd actually go through with the wedding, fake cold feet, or, and this was the kicker, bring out the ex for maximum drama. There were even messages about how much I would freak out and whether I would cry. That alone destroyed any attempt she made to rewrite the narrative. Word spread quickly. People who had been at the wedding started talking. Guests who had been uncomfortable with what she did now had the full context and weren't afraid to share it. Our mutual friend Emma, who had always been closer to Vanessa than to me, texted me that night, "I had no idea she was like this. I'm so sorry." Within a few days, Vanessa's reputation was in shambles. She had to deactivate her Instagram because people kept commenting with bride and clown emojis. Her own parents called me, apologizing for what she had done. Her dad, who had always been pretty quiet, told me he was ashamed of his daughter's behavior and that he raised her better than that. Apparently, They had warned her not to pull any stunts at the wedding, but she hadn't listened. Even her friends, the ones who had egged her on, started distancing themselves when they realized how bad she looked. Kayla, her maid of honor, posted this long, fake deep Instagram story about how she regretted her part in hurting someone without actually naming names or taking real responsibility. It was one thing to joke around, but publicly humiliating your fiancé at your own wedding? No one wanted to be associated with that kind of toxicity. Then came the financial consequences. Vanessa tried demanding I pay her back for the wedding costs. That was funny considering I had covered nearly everything. The venue? My card. The catering? My account. Even the honeymoon trip she had been so excited for, 2 weeks in Bali at this fancy resort with private pool villas and those breakfasts that float on a tray in the water? Booked under my name, paid for with my points in cash. And with one phone call, I cancelled it all. She was left with nothing. No wedding, no honeymoon, no sympathy. And the best part? The fake prenup wasn't even legally binding. It was just a bluff, a way to give her a taste of her own medicine. She could have fought me on the financial stuff if she'd checked with an actual lawyer, but I guess she was too embarrassed or too convinced it was real. A week later, she showed up at my door. I wasn't surprised. Ryan had warned me she'd been asking around for my new address. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was unwashed, she wasn't wearing makeup, and her eyes were red and puffy from crying. It was clear that she finally realized how badly she had messed up. She tried to apologize, saying she hadn't meant for things to go so far, that she never thought I would actually leave. I thought you'd just laugh it off like you always do, she said, her voice cracking. I never thought you'd actually walk out. She tried to tell me she still loved me, that we could fix this if I just gave her a second chance. That Jason meant nothing to her, that the bridesmaids' chat was just silly girl talk that got out of hand. That she'd go to therapy, work on herself, never pull a prank again. I wasn't interested. Not even a little bit. 4 years of putting up with her jokes at my expense had completely killed any feelings I had for her. I handed her an envelope and watched as she opened it with shaking hands. Inside was an invitation, not a real one, just a mock wedding invitation I'd made on Canva, set for the same venue where she had humiliated me. The date was that day, and the guest list, everyone who witnessed your joke. There was no groom's name, just one simple note at the bottom, now we're even. She looked up at me, speechless for once in her life. I didn't say a word. I just shut the door and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. The aftermath was both better and worse than I expected. Vanessa never recovered from what happened. Her stunt went viral after someone, not me, shared clips from the wedding on TikTok. Apparently, more than one person had been recording when everything went down. The videos got millions of views, with people calling her the bride who got left as a joke and making all kinds of reaction videos and memes. She lost job opportunities. Turns out potential employers don't love hiring someone who went viral for humiliating their partner. She lost friends, even the bridesmaids who had been in on it eventually distanced themselves to avoid the backlash. She even lost family support. Her mom told my mom at their book club, yeah, awkward, that they were deeply disappointed in her and had made it clear she needed to grow up and take responsibility. Jason? He wanted nothing to do with her after the backlash. Apparently, he had only agreed to the prank because Vanessa told him it would be a funny surprise that I was totally in on. When he realized he'd been used as a prop in her attention-seeking game, he ghosted her and moved on. As for me, I thrived. I took time to heal, went to therapy to figure out why I'd stayed with someone who constantly disrespected me, and focused on my career. 6 months after the non-wedding, I got headhunted for a better position at a competing firm with a significant pay bump. I moved to a nicer apartment in Capitol Hill, adopted another cat to keep Bowie company, a tiny black kitten named Ziggy, continuing the Bowie theme, and eventually met someone who actually respected me. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept trying to reach out, emails, messages, even showing up at places she thought I'd be. I never responded. The last I heard, she was struggling financially after being fired from her marketing job for creating a toxic work environment. Apparently the wedding stunt wasn't her first workplace drama, and was still single. She wanted a joke. She became the joke. So that's my story, Reddit. Sorry for the novel-length post, but it feels good to get it all out. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. TL.Dr. My fiancée thought it would be hilarious to bring her ex to our wedding and reveal she'd been placing bets with her bridesmaids about whether she'd go through with marrying me. I walked out, left her humiliated, and never looked back. Edit. Oh crap, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the support and awards. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, the prenup was completely fake and would never hold up in court. It was just to call her bluff. 2. No, I didn't post the videos that went viral. That was other wedding guests. 3. The bridesmaids have all since apologized individually, but I haven't accepted any of their apologies. Actions have consequences. 4. For those asking about Bowie, here's a cat tax. Imagine a photo of a majestic orange Maine Coon would be here. 5. Yes, I'm much happier now. Sometimes the trash takes itself out.